Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough of Newham's Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Commission. This evening's meeting is being held at Newham Town Hall, East Ham. Members unable to attend in person at this location are able to join remotely. However, they will not be able to attendance will not be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I would also like to welcome any members of the public and press who are watching on YouTube. With regards to meeting etiquette, members of council, please can I ask that you indicate that you wish to speak either by raising your physical hand or by using the hand up symbol on the Zoom dashboard. On this point, may I remind everyone to introduce themselves, speaking for the first time, for the benefit of the recording, and those watching the meeting, and to keep microphones muted when not speaking. This meeting of the London Borough of Newham's Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Commission, 23rd April 2025, is now called to order. Before we begin today's agenda, I kindly ask everyone to stand and observe a minute of silence in remembrance of His Holiness Pope Francis, who has sadly passed away. Thank you. Please be seated. Can I ask the committee to introduce themselves, starting from right?
Good evening, Councillor Jane Lofthouse, representing Glasgow South.
Thank you.
Alan Griffiths, Councillor for Canning Town South.
Thank you.
Santa Fields, Council for East Ham and member of this committee.
Councillor Imam from East Ham.
Councillor Jamal McCalman for Warling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. On this side,
Councillor Madeline Sarley Pontin, Forest Gate South, also Deputy Cabinet Lead to Education.
Good evening, Councillor Sarah Ruiz, Councillor for Custom House. And for this meeting, I am the Cabinet Lead for Children and Young People Services.
welcome.
Evening, everyone. I'm Laura Eden, the Director of Children's Services.
Okay, so moving on, any apologies for absence? Are there any apologies, Aaron?
I haven't received any apologies for absence, Chair.
Okay. Is that noted?
No.
And the agenda item? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
Dean Hussain says she's in a tree,
Delayed.
Okay,
hoping to get on.
okay. Any,
I think it's a long-term sick. So we'll go at all.
Huh?
Mariam Darwood is on long-term.
yeah. Yeah,
Never come in.
okay. Declarations of interest. Is there anything to declare? No. Is that noted? And then minutes of the last meeting. So the next item on the agenda is to agree the minutes of our previous meeting. However, as that meeting only took place last week, draft minutes are not yet available. We will circulate them to all members as soon as they are finalized and we'll formally agree them at our next meeting. Is that okay? Is that agreed? Brilliant, thank you. And is there a seconder for that? Yes. All right, thank you. So moving on to item 5, reports of any urgent safeguarding issues. I would now like to bring in Councillor Ruiz and Laura Eden to provide a verbal update on any urgent safeguarding matters affecting children in the borough. Is there anything to report to the Commission?
Not from me, no.
No, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item is the work program, item number 6. So at our pre-meeting, we did discuss, is there anything that the committee would like to add to the current work program we have, but they're quite happy with it. But obviously it is up to the next incoming chair to choose what the agenda is going to be. But for purpose of the agenda item, we're quite happy with the program. I think we wanted to add.
We decided together transport.
Yeah, children
Passenger.
and transport. And
Special schools.
yeah, any special schools in Newham?
So we'd like to add,
Schools for sent in Newham.
right, so we do have specialist schools in Newham.
Okay,
I'm not sure that we look at them in any different way.
okay, that's fine.
In all of our education.
Okay, so there were certain things,
You say passenger transport?
yes. So
No,
So is that for next year's work plan?
next, so we just,
just a word of warning on that. If regulations go well, then passenger transport will be moved from children's services into environment and sustainable transport.
okay,
But we don't, not sure when,
okay,
whether that will happen, but they certainly have the skill set rather than any mechanics lingering in children's services.
okay,
And I was just going to say, if I may, Chair,
yeah,
it should be remembered that the transport arrangements are arranged through the transport and SEN departments with individual children and their parents. And the school is simply the location they're picked up or dropped off at.
okay.
It's not a separate agreement or correspondence with the schools.
Chair, if you don't mind me interjecting,
Yeah, please do.
it might be more relevant for this committee to scrutinise children missing education or missing out on education.
Okay,
Within that could be a dedicated section on, are there any issues with transporting children into and from school that is affecting their education? Because that, I think, is your role as scrutineers.
okay.
Agree.
Thank you for that. Is that agreed? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 7, special educational needs, strategic improvement plan update. So colleagues would have read the report, so I would like the officers, if you can, in 5 minutes, just give a brief outline on it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for my arrival. So this report captures, well, originally the intention was to capture 1 year into our send and inclusion strategy. In the meantime, we've also had a local area send inspection. So what we've done here is we've captured progress against both of those because that's had an impact on how we're dating our strategic plan within the local area. So there's a brief summary at the front of the report, which captures how we've done that. And also refers to that inspection, which took place in October last year, just to flag that this was a local area send inspection. So although it inspected the send service that I'm responsible for, that we're responsible for, and other elements of children's services, it also looked at the delivery of support for children with special educational needs via health partners and some other partners. So it's the whole local area offer for children with educational needs. The report focuses around the key areas of priority that we're working on this year in our strategic action plan. We have, as is always the case following an inspection, shared this report with the Department for Education as our regulator. They're satisfied. They've said that they're happy with the quality of the report and the detail of the key performance indicators, and they've as a result, they only want to monitor progress twice a year, which is a significant reduction. So there's definitely some progress in terms of the scrutiny of our external regulators. As we've captured here, there's always more for us to do. And while we support the outcome of the inspection, we agreed with the outcome of the inspection. In fact, inspectors agreed with our own self-evaluation of where we were as a local area. There are key 5 areas outlined in the action plan, which were both raised at the inspection and then also endorsed by our own analysis of where we've got to as a local area. I'm conscious, as you said, Chair, that everyone will have read the report, so I won't read through each of those, but I'm more than happy to take questions on any or all of them.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll open it up for questions. Any questions? Councillor Imam?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm on page number 16, 3.1, bullet point 5, engagement. So it's mentioned relationship with parent, you see have enhanced to police. So what are the strategies?
So the main strategy that they co-produced with us was the send and inclusion strategy that was launched at the end of 2023, December 2023. There was around 18 months leading up to the launch of that strategy. We worked closely with parents, carers, and also children, young people to listen to their the progress of the children and families, but also how in schools and education settings, and also progress being made within their health service providers too. And so that strategy is the biggest strategy that we've co-produced with parents and carers. Since then, we've been meeting regularly with the Newham Parent Care Forum, which is a body that's every local area has. They are a representative group of parents and carers, predominantly of children with special educational needs or who've had children with special educational needs who are now adults, who meet with us. They invite members of our teams to their coffee mornings. Also, I know Councillor Rose has been, various people go along to talk about specific areas, but also.
So we have Mike, I think, is there, no?
There's no mic, sorry.
Do you mind to read out?
Which piece? Sorry.
Shall we?
Read it loud.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Apologies, it's been a long day.
So it's hard for us to hear you too, so.
Yeah, because we don't have the mic, it's a problem.
So I just keep going. Is there a specific part you want me to repeat or?
No, it's good. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
go on, sorry.
supplementary questions like.
Yeah.
I've heard what you're saying. Obviously, it has enhanced and the way of working and the strategies, but what, if there's any specific strategies that you think has helped by?
So, I mean, 2 things. The strategy itself has helped. In terms of the feedback from parents and carers, they say the strategy has helped because it's given us clarity on what we need to do with them to support improvement for their children. I would say my experience in Newham so far, the other thing that's helped is improving communication with parents and carers through, for example, the coffee mornings, through the various, so the chair of our Parent Care Forum attends the SEND Executive Board. She's the co-chair with Laura. And so there is much more strategic involvement now, parents and carers. They are the first to tell you, as I'm sure you all hear, they're the first to tell us that there's more to do. And they will always raise that directly with us. But I think one of the biggest, I'm sure others will have a view on this, that one of the biggest improvements has been around building our relationship with groups of parents and carers so that we can be ready to respond to the particular issues. There are some things that happen more often than others for those parents, and we need to look at the themes. And we do that as a system, but we also need to be able to help individual parents when we can, if there are specific issues. Tends to be around making sure they have the right, what's written in an education, health and care plan is fully available, for example. And so we look at the quality of those plans. Supporting parents and carers sometimes to build the relationship with the school is really important, because sometimes some families have had a less positive experience, and so we can help build that relationship, but also working as a system. So an education, health and care plan, there are 3 parts there: the education, which is SEND service and school; health, which could be a whole range of services depending on the needs of the child; and care is any needs around social care, and that can be familial as well. And so it's very bespoke to the child. So we need to be quite flexible as a system. And I think certainly inspectors felt that that had massively improved.
So just,
Go on.
Fine.
thank you. So I've heard what you have said, and in terms of enhancing strategies. So what I can understand is that there is more encouragement for the parents to give the feedback. On the basis of that feedback, the communication has got better. But what I was looking to also hear is that has it played any role in improvement of, and I'll give you an example as well. For example, the waiting time.
Yes.
Has it come down because of the feedback you have heard, and have you added any resource, any strategies related to those?
Yeah. So and there are a number of aspects in here, including a need to continue to improve waiting times. So some waiting times have improved. For example, the waiting times for plans has improved. However, at the same time, the need has increased. So it's like we're chasing an increase in need. So although there has been an improvement in the amount of time it takes reduction for plans to be produced, there are some specific areas in the system, they're outlined in the report. For example, assessments for autism. There has been a longer waiting time because of the increase of needs. So more and more families are waiting for assessments. So we as a whole system, and just to be clear, many of those assessments are health assessments. They now need to find more services to do those assessments because the need has increased. So yes, there has been an improvement in waiting times, but we are still chasing this increase and trying to work as a local area to address that as best we can.
Chair.
Thank you. Go on.
So children are not only waiting for assessment, but also we are hearing from schools and from parents that many children have been refused assessment for the medical conditions. So they haven't had any assessment because they have been refused by local authority. At least local authority should allow the child to be diagnosed if parents or school do not know what clinical or neurological condition the child has. They can apply for ESCP with an assessment. Could we know how many children have been refused for assessment?
So a refusal from medical assessment would come from the health service, not the local authority. So if there are children who haven't had a medical assessment, which was part of the question, that wouldn't be our decision as a local authority. We can ask the question of our health partners, but we don't look at those assessments because they're medical assessments. If there are children being put forward for education healthcare plans who don't meet threshold, that could be for a number of reasons. So the case officers who work in the SEND service would capture that information.
Yeah, so I'm coming to your second point. Yes, I'm asking for neurological assessment, not a health. Neurological is brain. So I'm asking about neurological assessment. Neurological disorder is autism. Neurological disorder, there are many things. So the local authority sometimes doesn't allow parent to have an education health care plan because they say the child doesn't need any assessment. They refuse in first stage assessment. Second stage is if they are diagnosed, they have a condition, then they are eligible, or then they can apply for ESCP. If I'm fine, I don't need education health and care plan. So we are hearing from many, many parents, and because I've been working with the parents group such a long time, the parent always saying they've been refused for assessment.
So we always, in order to determine whether a child has an education health care plan, there has to be an assessment.
Yes.
If a school doesn't carry out the assessment, because the school is the first point, normally, if a child is at school, some children aren't at school, and so it would be a health provider or a different provider could do the assessment. Normally, the school decides to put a child forward for assessment. It's normally coordinated by the SENCO, and it's only at that point that an education health care plan might not be granted if they don't meet the threshold. But in order to decide that, an assessment always has to take place.
Yeah, assessment always rejected by local authority, not by school.
The assessment is put forward by the school. Who does the assessment depends.
Apply for it.
Yeah. But who does the
Local
assessment?
authority.
It's put forward by the school because they identify the child. And then there's a SENCO sitting next to me who may have a.
I'm also a school governor. I heard it.
So, I'm sure,
I mean,
just to
I think
share.
it'll be helpful
Yeah,
to let us know the process.
yes.
So if a child is identified, I'll bring you in, that they need an assessment, how does it start and how does it end?
So school identifies if a child needs an assessment in partnership with the family, because the child is asked their thoughts, the family is asked their thoughts. How that takes place is very dependent on the age of the child, the needs of the child. We have some children who are non-verbal, so the school will use different approaches to find out that information. With the approval of the family, which is important, with their consent, the school will then put forward the child for an assessment. There is then a discussion with professionals and about what assessment that includes. There's nearly always an assessment with an educational psychologist because they're specialists in child development, and they can often help to identify other assessments the child might need in terms of where they are in their development. There are frequently, all partners are consulted, so education, health and care all consulted. Some aren't required to be part of the assessment because, for example, we have some children with quite complex medical needs, and that's the main focus of the assessment. And so there'll be an education assessment and a health assessment. But it's very much specific to the child's needs, which assessments take place. There isn't a blanket approach to assessment because it depends on the needs of the child. And that's very much the SEND code of conduct. We have to follow that code of practice, that it's around the needs of the child and not a blanket assessment approach.
Thank you. Is there anything that you want to add, Mads, that Annabelle didn't say? Is there anything you want to add?
It's just to give us a little bit more school side information, because I am myself, I'm a SENCO and have been doing that job for a long time. So within school, there are you have the children that may need short-term supports because maybe they've been off, they've been poorly, maybe they've just missed out on some information. They might need some short-term support with something. We wouldn't term them as having school an SEN, they just need a short amount of support. It's for the school working with the parent to work out if a child is at that level, whether they need support that can be offered within school. Some children need to go through the process of needing support in school, maybe for 2 terms, to see whether a school-based intervention that's delivered by people that have been trained in a particular, either a speech and language programme, or maybe a physiotherapy programme, or something like a specialist reading intervention, to see if the child has a short-term need that again can be overcome with school-based provision. They would be called school action, okay? Or school support now, school support. So those are SEN children, but they're school support. There will be some children who don't make that progress after they've had a really good high fidelity intervention. And there'll be some children that might come in to school, either nursery or as children are learning more intensive tasks, or may join a school who have more obvious need. At that point, the head teacher working with the SENCO and the senior leadership team, usually also with the educational psychologist, will work out the priority order, like a triage, because it would be lovely if every school in the country, every time a child arrives and parent had a concern, could send them straight for an expensive and, well, expense isn't the problem. It's more the fact that you don't want to be testing kids for things they may not have. Okay, it's bad ethics in terms of education and psychologists are concerned. If a child's needs cannot be met in the day-to-day running of the school, even with specialist interventions, they may need an ASD assessment, they may need an ADHD assessment, they may need an assessment for dyspraxia, dyslexia, speech and language, a range of issues. Those assessments are undertaken by the National Health Service. A local authority, if the child's need is high enough, can use the assessment from an educational psychologist based in the school to undertake the educational health and care plan. There has to be an assessment by a specialist working at least level 7. So it could be a speech and language therapist, it could be an occupational therapist, it could be the educational psychologist in the school or the educational psychologist in the school. But as we know, there are long waiting lists for people in the NHS, and also everybody who gets an autism diagnosis needs an education, health and care plan, and that should be remembered by parents.
Thank you.
So my initial question was, not for EHS.
I was just going to ask.
The initial question was, local authority do refuse plan and do refuse assessment. Sometimes school doesn't have enough qualified therapists at school. Local health authority has to make this arrangement. Sometimes local authority don't do that and they refuse. We are hearing that a lot. Secondly, what Imam asking, the parents think, maybe some children even hasn't started a school. They need assessment. So school cannot even refer them.
So are you saying that the local authority is refusing assessments to children who need to be assessed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Can I just come in there?
Yes, please.
It sounds like you're in post.
I'm in the parents' and also I'm a governor.
Yes. And that's what they're telling you. So specifics around that need to come into the local authority.
I am coming from the agenda also. It's on the agenda.
No. I'm just saying, if you would like to share specifics so we can look into, because that's serious. What you're saying to me is children's needs are not being met. It's our role to ensure that the system is working where children's needs. So if we've got parents out there, there's a system and we need to understand what those parents are going through.
I understand.
What parents have said through the Parent and Carer Forum to us and what's commented on in the improvement journey is that an assessment for autism, for a neurodiverse condition, for example, or a social, emotional, mental health condition, is a point in time. That child's presentation, behaviour, needs don't actually change the day before the assessment and the day after.
Oh, it doesn't.
So what parents and carers have told us is that it's actually the support while waiting. We call it waiting well. What support do you have as a multi-agency partnership while we have all these parents waiting to be seen or waiting for their child to be assessed? And so we, going back to your point about enhanced strategies, we've worked with them to develop pathways, which we need to develop more of, to support children to wait well, so such as the Newham, which is the new multi-agency collaboration of all voluntary sector agencies for children with social and emotional mental health difficulties. So things like that. But in terms of specifically, if we have parents who are stating they have been refused an assessment and
I will come back to you with
those
data.
need to be over.
Chair, I will come back to Laura with the data.
Yes.
Together.
Thank you.
So
That would be more helpful
Yes.
than anything. We can't actually act.
I will come back to the data.
Take it outside this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, right, okay, I'm gonna close that. Right, any other questions? Yes.
Not us.
Laura's answered part of my question, which was about the upskilling staff and the waiting well. But I just wondered about the piloting new ways of undertaking robust diagnosis. I wonder if you could possibly expand on that.
Is that in part in area improvement one, councillor?
Yes, reduction of wait times. It's on the
So,
second page.
one thing to state on each of these, within the detail of the report, you'll see there are areas of improvement with specific actions, one of which you've referred to.
Yes.
These particular actions, so these were agreed with the Parent Care Forum in terms of what would be most helpful to address this. These particular actions are being led by our colleagues in the health partnerships. And we have a SEND executive board that Laura co-chairs with the chair of the Parent Care Forum. I then chair a SEND and AP development board, which is an operational group of partners from across the system. And the health members of that group are developing tools which they're going to bring to us to see how we can improve the process. Because as Laura says, it's about not just reaching the point of assessment, but while a family is waiting to have an assessment, there is ongoing support for them to access education, for them to access other therapeutic services. It's very much in its pilot stage at the moment, as you can imagine, but we're fortunate to have a number of schools and other settings, including early year settings, who volunteered to be part of that. And so they're working with our health partners to work with families who are willing to be part of a pilot, to see how that might help the process. And if it improves the waiting file and improves the waiting time, then we'll be able to roll it out more broadly across the system.
Right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other follow-ups or you fine?
No, I think that was.
I think
I'm going to bring Lester, Jemima, and then Shantu again.
First question, have any of the dates slipped at all?
No, they haven't. It's a great question. We are in the process of doing our analysis. I think I may have, apologies if I didn't in the summary, mention that we're on track with all of them. We've just reviewed progress and we're on track in all 5 areas so far. There are 2 risks that have been highlighted by services in terms of potential slipping later in the year, which I can flag. One is an ongoing challenge around recruitment of educational psychologists, which is a London-wide challenge. It's to do with numbers of educational psychologists in the system. And unfortunately, the fact that they can earn a lot more in the private sector than they can in a local authority role. And that's a London-wide challenge. We're working with partners across London to see how we might address that. So that's a risk in terms of later slippage. We haven't slipped yet. The other one is around, you'll be aware of some of the funding challenges that the NHS is facing now and the reduction in funding to the ICB. And so there is some concern, and it hasn't materialised yet, but this is what we're monitoring, that there may be an impact on some of the diagnostics if that feeds into some of these areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jemima.
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding the same issue. It's quite clear that there are some who are rejected. But what I want to understand is, even if they are rejected, is there any support for them?
So the majority of children who, and this is very generalization, rather than on specific cases, the majority of children who don't meet the threshold for education, health and care plan will be called children who require SEND support. So that's the category that's not in statute. A health and care plan is a statutory plan. SEND support means that needs have been identified that don't qualify for a plan, at least at this stage, because developmentally some children then assessed a few years later then do qualify, because some needs actually are harder to identify at some ages, particularly younger ages. Where children are less verbal or maybe communication skills haven't fully developed. And so we ensure that children are supported by making sure that the school still calls those children SEND support, because doesn't have the same, it's not as formal as education, health and care plan, but it does mean that the school has a responsibility to track progress more, They, when we report on things like attendance and attainment, they are grouped together to demonstrate whether there's a particular issue for those children. So if schools have lots of children send support not attending, then what are they doing? Clearly those needs are not being met, or the family don't feel supported. And so there is that category which enables a school to still identify the child has needs, but also to track their progress in case other needs appear later. And that's particularly important if a family's mobile and they move school, because you won't necessarily know what the challenges are for family. And so we really encourage schools to make sure they're appropriately using that category when they talk about groups of children who may have needs.
A follow-up.
Okay, go on.
Is it only in the school that they can get this care? But obviously, something is somewhere, but is it only in the school in case a child is not ready to go to school?
So no, if we're talking about age, there are a number of services that offer support to children before school age. And that's why the partnership is really important. We have a lot of information that comes to our SEND service from health visitors, for example, and a number of our teams within early help as well, because often a family won't know what the needs are. They just know that their child needs some help. And so where do I go for help? It's really important and we've done a huge piece of work over the past year to try and spread the word across all services that might work with families and to welcome families in. So for example, some of those early help services working in the libraries, being available, having, when I went to one of the Parent Care Forum meetings, someone from the local church asked me if we could give them some leaflets so that when families go to church, they know who to ask for help. We've had a number of local offer live events, which brings all sorts of partners together. Families can come along, whether they have a child with SEND or not, and ask questions. How do we get support if we need it? Another big focus for us is we have an inclusion service that's for non-statutory support and for areas that are less well covered now in the system, like dyslexia, because most schools have good support for dyslexia, but some families need a bit more, particularly families that are multilingual. And so that team that are based in the Tunmarsh Centre next to the Prue, they have a lot of members of staff who are multilingual, because sometimes accessing some of these resources, if you don't speak English, can be really challenging. So we try to be proactive as much as we can so that families know where to go for help.
Thank you.
Shantu.
From page number 36, Scindia's capacity. Scindia is run by local authority and really give impartial advice to parents and
Run by the local authority.
okay. At the moment, really, the Scindia service waiting time is really longer. And how can you minimize the waiting time as a local authority? Is there you have any channel, or are you working with them as a partnership? Or
Can I start on that?
yes.
So firstly, Sendias is not run by the local authority. It's a independent organisation. And at our last Send executive, we looked at the Sendias service and we are going to carry out a review because we recognise that there are waiting times. I think there's an issue with Sendias that not everybody knows who they are or where they are.
You're right.
I think there was also another issue in my mind that they don't have an office space.
They used to be, not anymore.
But they gave it up, which means that their address is actually the
Tunmarsh Lane
side. And for a lot of parents, they see that as being the council. So therefore they don't see that as being independent.
Yes.
So we are looking very seriously at Sendias.
Yeah.
Because for all sorts of reasons, we need to review how that service works.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Definitely.
Okay.
Good, thanks for me.
Gold star. That's quick.
So if colleagues don't have questions, I have few questions, if that's okay. So due to the progress made with the DFE interventions, when it was stopped, you stopped the local area improvement plan, it says. And then continued with the SEND strategic improvements. What's the difference?
It's a good question. So really, it's a building on the old plan. We have a new plan. There's not a huge amount of difference in terms of what we need to focus on, because as I said, the areas we identified that needed to improve, they agree with us. So we've really just created a new plan. What it's helped us to do is identify across the system how to prioritise our resources. So as I mentioned, health have raised a couple of concerns about some of their resources. So how do we now work as a system to make sure we stay on track? It's given some, I guess it's validated our plan in terms of them saying, yes, you're on track. There's still work to do. There's still these areas of improvement. So it has a new name. For us, it's business as usual. We don't do things. Yeah, we don't do things based on what inspectors say. We should. We do things because we want to do the best job we can for children. However, it's helpful to have that response from inspectors and the DFE, because they've helped to say, well, you're on track, you're doing well, you've self-evaluated appropriately, your data is good quality, which, as some of you will remember, was a problem in the past in terms of a previous SEND inspection. So it's helped us to say, okay, we've done this well, let's build on that. But also these are some new things we now need to add in order to move forward. So it's a new phase based on where we are in the regular.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So on page 16, under key identified strengths, due to targeted service delivery, waiting times for therapies have reduced.
Yes.
Which is really great. What was it before? And was it like, because some colleagues are saying some therapies are not, people are not getting it.
Yes.
Here it says we are getting it.
Well, some we are, and this is always the challenge. So the feedback was, and we agree with this, that speech and language waiting times have improved considerably. Occupational therapy has improved considerably because of the redesign of those services, which again are health services. But some other therapeutic service, some of the mental health support from the NHS, that hasn't improved enough. Some of the autism diagnosis services haven't improved enough. While there's praise for some things strengthening, not all of them have.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to add to that.
Yeah.
And it is connected. I saw today, I think, that the Newham Parents Forum's next meeting, actually Marion, and I don't know what her other name is.
Marion Levine, Head of Therapies.
Head of Therapies is going to be their guest speaker. And Marion is one of life's really helpful people. So Shantu will probably be there, but you know, those are the things that are making a difference, because before the Parent Carers Forum would not have had access to Marion.
No. Okay.
Even though they could, but they didn't. So when people who are actually delivering these services have those conversations with the Parent Carers Forum, which are, of course, as parents, then actually we can see where there are gaps. Marion can't be everywhere, and I'm sure there are gaps, but you know, it is worth noting that we are going out there, and the Parent Carers Forum actually are an integral part of our improvement journey.
Thank you. So another strength, which is on early help and social care integration, it says about timely and strong social work practice. What has changed?
Well, considerable work within our social care teams, but also as identified here was the multi-agency work between our early help and social care teams and the early years team, because as I said earlier, sometimes a family might need help before a child reaches school age, and there were a number of cases. So for that particular example, inspectors worked with our various teams and looked at a number of cases of children at that age group, and they identified really good practice in how professionals talk to each other. Historically, not just in Newham, but in various other local areas, services have worked separately, and that doesn't always help meet the needs of children. And so this was found as an example of good practice, how different professionals work together and the needs of a child.
Thank you.
It's good timing.
Few more great timing, Matt.
Praising your team.
So,
Chair on board.
sorry,
I said chair on board.
did you want to come in?
I have a question too, so.
Okay, so let me ask one and then you can come in. I got a few questions. So on page 17, alternative provision and post-16 pathways mentions that young people have limited access to post-16 employment, training opportunities.
Yes.
Children and young people with SEND, the local authority is responsible for education, employment, training until they are 25. If there is a gap after 16,
Yes.
what are we doing and does it push up the needs figures?
All excellent questions, Chair. Thank you. So the first part of that, that you've raised there is around our statutory duty. So we do have robust processes for children, young people with education, health and care plans, because as you quite rightly said, we have a statutory duty from the age of birth up until the age of 25 for children with identified needs. So if a young person is 16 through to 25 and has an education, health and care plan, we work with the family and the education provider. We have a number of good examples of that. For example, Newham College have expanded through working with the local authority their specialist offer for young people post-16, and they have pathways. There's also the Department for Education's supported internships programme, which is a funded model which has been really successful in Newham. A number of young people have gone through college into employment who have education, health and care plans. So that's a real, and actually during the inspection, inspectors visited Newham College and met some of those young people, and we're really, really impressed with those young people, as should be. Where we have gaps, and we identified this ourselves immediately, is if a young person from the age of 16 doesn't have an education, health and care plan, but they do have SEND support, that other group I mentioned earlier, there are gaps in the system and there aren't pathways, there aren't some of those funded opportunities for young people. And if a young person, the reason AP's mentioned, which I talked about last week, is if a young person's also had a history of exclusion, then their opportunities are even fewer, and they are the young people most at risk of becoming not in education, employment and training, and not just in Newham, it's a well-known statistic. So we have an action plan now. We're working with, I think we mentioned last week that at the last meeting that post-16 education Newham, aside from children with education, health and care plans, post-16 education Newham doesn't sit in children's services, it sits in a different part of the council. However, those colleagues are in this action plan and they're now meeting with us monthly, and we're looking at what does the data tell us around young people who are at risk of becoming NEET or who are NEET, how many of them have had special educational needs. How can we work as a partnership to intervene? So, for example, I was meeting with colleagues yesterday about reaching out to some of the local employers and other providers where young people might benefit from an in-college mentor, from a work-based, employer, so they can gain work experience, because some young people find it harder to have those opportunities than their peers who maybe are more confident or who have learned the social skills to negotiate. There's a lot of work to do in that space because of the gaps in the system. It's a cohort that nationally is not well supported. There's no additional funding, unfortunately, for young people post-16. If they are sent support, if they have an education, health and care plan, we can support them. There's a gap there, so we're trying to work as a system to address those gaps.
I'm going to bring you in, Sarah.
Just really on the political area, I think that what this has shown is that there has been almost a total disconnect between post-16 education that sits in one directorate and education that sits in another directorate.
Yeah.
And we have now started, a little while ago, there's a far more of a getting together, whereas before it would be like, well, the only time that we would ever, I'll be honest, the only time I ever had to deal with post-16 is when there was an issue.
Yeah.
And then it would come to me. If there was anything great, it wouldn't come to me, it would go to somebody else. But actually, we've been trying really hard to actually work better together, because we recognise that young people from the age of 19, that there actually is just like an edge of a cliff. And we need to do far better on that. And I think that by working collegiately with the post-16 education that sits in another directorate, it can only benefit the young people.
Yeah, I have a
I'm just going to follow up at
supplementary
you. Yeah.
in relation to your question.
Yeah, I'm just come back. So what you mentioned is, Annabelle, that Sarah did as well. So after 16, it's the education post 16 sits somewhere else. Is that the way the council is working? Because in terminology has changed, or the responsibilities have changed for local authorities, because under 18, they are children.
They are. The post-16 education used to sit in children's services. It was moved into 2019 to a different part of the council. You're right to say that since then, the statutory responsibility for education now goes up to 18.
Yeah.
For children who don't have SEND. So we have got a bit of a disconnect. We are working more and more with our colleagues, but it's not set up in the same way as our education services.
And that is under review.
Oh, good. That was my, we want to bring you in, Mads, just supplementary, yeah.
To your question, you mentioned about employment service and training service for post-16 and post-16 up to 18, or my question is, what service you have available for above 19? Because some children still has education, health and care plan, even though they're 19 plus.
You want an advance answer to your question you put to council, don't you?
No, but what training or employment support you have for them?
The services themselves don't sit with us, regardless of who the young person is. The responsibility within our team is to support the child and family with their education, health and care plan. So if, let's say, a 20-year-old in Newham has an education, health and care plan, our team and actually health and all the partners are responsible for monitoring the plan, working with the young person, working with the family. But the provision of the service,
employment service,
provision of any employment, any training would sit within adult education, which sits elsewhere in the council. So any of the provisions around education doesn't sit in our
0 to 25 years only your service.
But not enough.
only for SEND, only for the.
I'm talking about SEND.
Yes, but the SEND service doesn't run our schools or our colleges. The SEND service oversees the statutory requirements we have to support children with SEND. So if a child is, of any age, the education is provided by whichever setting they're in. So if it's an adult, a post-16-year-old young person, then that adult education piece will be monitored elsewhere in the council.
It's a part of your department.
Not post-16 education.
No.
Just up to post-16, that's all.
I'm going to bring
inclusive economy and strategic housing.
Councillor Madeline.
Shantu, you can shake your head, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit with us.
Yeah. If you want, I can talk to you about it afterwards.
Yeah, but no point. It doesn't sit with you, as Sarah said.
But
That's
I can give you advice, sorry.
I don't think we need advice. I think it's the fact that, as I explained before, there is a disconnect that we're trying really hard to work with. But until it comes under one directorate, and actually, if we're reviewing it, we are reviewing it because we recognise that actually young people over the age of 16 are in some cases, not all, in some cases, missing out, and that needs to change.
It's under process, okay.
Yeah, because there is a review. Imam, I'm going to bring you in.
I have a question from page number 35, area of engagement. So communication and the local offer mentions that young people with SEND who do not speak English will receive translation services. Do we have an in-house translation service, and is it available for families at all times? And just to add another question to that, please explain how this service works and how much does it cost the council, and where does the funding come from the service?
So we don't have an in-house translation service. We are blessed with many colleagues within the inclusion service who do speak a number of languages. And they have built very strong community relationships. They all live within the community. And we're fortunate that most of the languages that large groups of families speak, we have people, so we're just very fortunate. So therefore, it doesn't cost anything additional to the services. However, there are occasions when we don't have someone who speaks a language, and at that point, as with any member of a council team, we need to reach out and buy in support, which we will of course do, because we want families to access. That's on very much on an ad hoc basis. We don't have to pay for it.
We used to have
We did, yeah,
the
but
language shop,
we don't have that now.
and I think it hasn't been in existence in my second time on the council.
Yeah.
It was a traded service.
I will add that we are fortunate in Newham to have such a vibrant volunteer sector.
Yeah.
And there are many volunteers, particularly, I mentioned some of the churches that I spoke to,
Absolutely.
who volunteer to help families understand. And I know when I was running a school as a head teacher, our volunteers were brilliant at helping families to understand what services they needed.
Thank you. I'm going to bring you in, Jemima.
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding what that is under review. This is possible for the council to work in partnership with private sector. So they have the employment. Really help them with that.
I suppose we may have a different definition of the private sector.
Okay.
So when it comes to employment and employment opportunities, then our young people and our council services will go to anyone who can offer a proper placement or employment, and it would be monitored at the same as anywhere. So if a young person was wanting to go and work in Morrison's, or they wanted to work in wherever, there are pathways in. So if that's what you mean by working with the private sector, then that already happens. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
It's more got to do with, we are in a financial situation right now, so the council can afford a lot of things, depending on funding. Whilst in the private sector, they have this there.
We wouldn't pay we wouldn't be paid. So if one of our young people went to work or did a work placement, we wouldn't, the host organisation wouldn't be charging the council. That would be something that they do. So it doesn't cost us anything, does it?
No.
No.
My point I'm making is, and the council, together with firms as Tesco, have a broad-based program. And the council approach Tesco example.
Oh, I think we do already. Yeah.
Can I bring Annabelle in?
Just to clarify, and this, I need to be brief because this doesn't sit with post-16 education, sits elsewhere in the council. But the people who do that for young people in Newham when they're 16 and above are careers advisors, and our adult education providers, sixth forms, colleges, and all other post-16 providers all have careers teams. Some of the targets within the action plan are actually for us to work with those careers advisors to make sure they're prioritising our young people with special educational needs. And that's where the link is. So we wouldn't have capacity to go out and link with Tesco's, but they will.
But they do.
And we want them to prioritise our young people with SEND.
Thank you.
Okay. Very briefly, because it's been.
Add on to that, from about the year 9, in a child with education, health and care plans annual review, is actually a part of the form that refers towards independence and towards adulthood. And as part of that, it will each year with the parents, the school, and anyone that comes from any of the outside agencies, will discuss with the parents and the child what their needs are with regards towards independence. So depending on the level of need of the child, if they're a child who needs some community type of work experience and they're working at a particular level and they're at Eastham College, they may work in the SEN cafe, for example, and that's been set up, and that's quite a normal nationwide way of working with young people at a particular level that need work experience with a lot of support. Young people that could actually go out and have work experience and undertake some kind of pre-apprenticeship type model, there are, as Annabelle has stated, in Newham College, in other colleges around East London, there are actually 1 year apprenticeship schemes which are funded through the government, which have been running now for a few years and are very successful. So they actually teach as part of the course that the young people undertake, not only maybe the time released to go and do work experience in the community or in, as you say, private organisations, but they'll also undertake a range of skills-based classes based on confidence and communication and actually getting to and from and planning journeys on all that level of things. Above that, you've got young people that may need specific help who are undertaking particular mainstream courses within colleges or sixth forms, and they will be working very closely with the career services at the colleges or at the schools, and also with their specific teachers. So if they're doing motor mechanics level 1, or if they're doing health and social care level 2, then their tutors will be helping them to find work experience as part of their practical jobs that they're doing. If they're not doing a practical subjects, if they're doing something like business studies or something like that, it may be a more general type of career path they may be looking at with the careers support person from the college or the school. And many have access to specialist SEN people who cover the SEN cohort as within their responsibility. Young people that are maybe taking more public examinations will be assisted through other means, and will also have access to things like access arrangements for taking public examinations, which will be undertaken by the SEN department.
Thank you.
It's usually done within the college or the.
I'm just gonna,
Anymore.
I'm gonna bring Laura in.
Just to say, the Youth Empowerment Service do a huge amount in this
Okay.
in terms of employment, and you'll hear more about that at full council.
Thank you. Imam, is it related to?
Most of the time, so I'll pass.
Okay, so I've got a question. So when you're looking at the area of improvements, reduction of waiting time mentions that low level of mental health is not accessing the service in a timely way, young people. If they're with camps, and then it's fine, but if they have low levels of mental health issues, obviously they don't get any support. This can worsen their condition. They can have an impact on education, self-harm, suicide, social isolation, substance misuse, and the list goes on. How can we help these young people as a local authority? Can we approach alternative provisions, organizations, the volunteer section, volunteer communities or organizations where they can help the young people? Have you looked into that sort of?
That's exactly what we have been doing. What that pointed to is children who are waiting, who have low level needs, always seem to get overtaken by children with higher level needs, understandably, because of the escalation. But what are the pathways for those children? And that's when I talked about the integrated front door, which is a pilot in Eastham and Plaistow, which we're looking to roll out for the whole borough. And with the collaboration, the Newham of multi-agency collaboration voluntary sector agencies, and I just chaired the Children and Young Persons Mental Health Board this afternoon, which, heard the evaluation. It's extremely positive. And that's what the inspectors found. We need more of that.
Okay.
And it needs to be borough-wide rather than limited to certain areas.
East Ham and Plaistow.
East Ham and Plaistow.
So we have a list of people who deliver that sort of service.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
For some unknown reason, I think Laura and I, well, all of us, well, probably Annabelle not, that our report on the send only goes up to page 3.
Scroll down.
I have scrolled down and all
It's
I've
not
got then
page
is,
numbers.
Yeah, we just got the PowerPoint.
but,
They're in the bottom right, the numbers.
yeah, but we've then only got the strategy. We haven't got anything further than that.
Not even the action plan? Oh, so apologies.
Yeah, that's,
So I don't know what, so if I'm looking a bit, when I've gone to the page that you've said, I haven't got that page.
so
I think,
my question was from page 23.
can I add a point on mental health support?
Yeah.
Just the other thing just to flag is that many schools have done a lot of work in the recent years to try and have practitioners within the school to support
Yeah.
those low-level needs. So increasingly, so for example, if a child has mental health needs due to trauma, there are a number of trauma-informed practitioners working in schools now. Many schools have mental health first aiders who are fully trained to support some of those children and families. So it's a real approach which has helped lots of young people while they're waiting for assessments as well.
Thank you. Does colleagues have any questions? Because I've got 3 more questions.
You have the slide, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, area of improvement, it says on transition and preparing for adulthood. Producing a PFA toolkit that children with SEND needs will have a clearer roadmap.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So this comes under area of improvement 3, and is overseen by the Preparation for Adulthood Board. So that's a board that's co-chaired by Laura and by Jason Strelitz, the Corporate Director of Adults, because we recognised the transition from being school-aged into adulthood for many young people is a point which could be where young people feel less supported. And so the toolkit is being designed to support young people to be empowered, to have some ownership over decision making, not just in terms of education access, but also access to support from social care, access to support from health, because we want part of the SEND code of practice focuses on how we help young people to become independent. Young people with SEND can often find it harder to become independent as they move into adulthood. And so the focus here is giving young people tools to make decisions around their own support, whether that's some of the things we discussed around education, experience, employment, but it could also be access to healthcare of various sorts. And the toolkit's designed for them to make some of those decisions, still with our support, but without things needed to be decided for them or explained in much detail.
Thank you. So if these young people were 18,
Yes.
they're no more children, but had SEND needs.
Yes.
But if their parents were subjected to no recourse to public funds, does it work? Do we still support them?
Good question.
From the EHC.
So the education, health and care
25.
plan is funded up until the age of the plan. So a young person can have an education, health and care plan up to the age of 25. Not all plans run to that age because some needs are age specific. Some young people, the plan ends when they're 18, 20. It depends very much. And the young person's involved in that decision making. So I can think of a number of cases of young people who I've supported who have had a diagnosis of ASD, they've gone on to achieve, they've gone into employment and they've no longer sought the support.
Yeah.
A young person can choose not to have a plan. It's their right not to have a plan. If a young person is entitled to and wants an education care, healthcare plan up to the age of 25, that will be fully funded regardless of their family's status.
Oh, right. Okay, that's good. Thank you. So children and young people with SEND having access to information about short breaks
Yes.
so that they can have respite options. do we pay for these short breaks? How does it work?
Anyone want to talk about short breaks?
Well, it comes under our local offer, doesn't it?
Yes.
So short breaks were what we used to commonly known as respite.
Yeah.
So yes, that's short breaks can be either overnight or it can be a day or whatever, and it's there on our local offer website.
Okay.
And people, or you can ask if you get additional support, financial support. Children have their own budget, and it's up to parents. I think that we don't. So I once was asked why we wouldn't pay for a child to go horse riding. Okay. And my answer was, would you be paying for your other child to go horse riding? And the answer was yes. And I said, well, why wouldn't you pay for your other child? So, I think that's quite interesting, but certainly about short breaks. Yeah, it's available, and yeah, sometimes they go to Fair Play House or
So the service sits in Matt's area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so in terms of short break, we have developed our short break offer. So we have now a number of Saturday clubs and weekend clubs for our children with additional needs. So now we've created an offer where a parent can just call up, and if their child sort of meets the threshold, then they'll automatically get the offer without requiring coming to a MASH or social services to request that service. So they can automatically get it, because if they've got a child, then they should have that. We are also developing a short break coordinator in the early help service to really work with voluntary sector organizations, because there's so many agencies out there that can offer services to our children. So what we're trying to do is connect and build a portfolio of sort of services for our kids. And what the short break coordinator will also do is that rather than families, so at this present moment, we sort of refer families to our local offer, which is a website, which could be quite complex to navigate and difficult. So that short break coordinator will take them through the short break offer in terms of what they're entitled, so that a family can sort of access the right short break of their choice.
Thank you. My last question. Are there many young people with SEND needs in homeschooling? And if so, how does that process work?
So there are some children, young people who, where the family has decided to electively home educate and the child has special educational needs. We have, I think I've touched on this in previous meetings. We have a group called the Children Missing in Education Strategic Boards that meets regularly. I chair the group. We have 2 elective home education teachers who visit the families. So they do home visits. They look at the education provision. We always urge families wherever we can to keep their children in school, even if they're waiting for an assessment, because that school has more resources than a family would. And of course, we know that families will need additional support. It's very difficult for a family to cover all the aspects that school can cover. But we also understand that it's parents have a right to electively home educate. If a child has any special educational needs, however, we will intervene more often. We'll be in contact with the family more often. And if we feel that the education is not good quality, we will continue to work with that family and try to support them. But the majority of the time, we're really working with the family to find a school place that they're happy with.
And they take them off?
The majority of the time, yes. And any missed school, of course, is something that we're not happy about. But we also understand the stress that families are under when they think a child may have needs, particularly if they're not yet diagnosed. And so we try to, with the family, to find a school place.
All right, thank you. So, Gemma, last question from this segment.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, please do.
You did say that if the present is meets the threshold. What about those? What is What is there for them? What support is for them? The same applies to your answer. If the person is not entitled, what is there for them? How are we helping them?
So in terms of children who don't qualify for the Education, Health and Care Plan, every child has an entitlement to education regardless of need, and the school that they're in is responsible for providing that education. So they're entitled to access the broad and balanced curriculum that every child under the Education Act is entitled to. If there are needs that the child and the family has raised with the school is expected to accommodate those. It's more challenging, but if a child doesn't meet threshold for Education Health Care Plan, it means that the professionals involved feel that that child can learn within a normal setting. So they can learn within the classroom. It's not to say that every classroom isn't full of children with different needs. There are multiple needs. Some are special educational needs, some are language needs. You know, there are many different needs that we all have as humans. And we would expect our teachers and teaching assistants and others to work with the child and differentiate for them. It's worth saying that the majority of schools do that extremely well in Newham. Newham has a strong history of being a very inclusive borough for children. There are, of course, exceptions to that. But as I've said in previous scrutiny meetings, we have so many examples of good practice, and schools learn from one another and how to in classrooms, learning together. So in the majority of cases, we would just be working with the school to support them to build on that good practice. We also have a SENCO forum that meets regularly. So that's a forum of all of the SENCO, with the special educational needs coordinators. And that's a meeting that our team coordinates, and SENCOs share strategies and support, because their responsibility in schools is to train teachers in how to be inclusive, as well as to support children and families. So they have a role in helping teachers think, okay, I have, let's say, 4 or 5 children with dyslexia in my classroom. Dyslexia is not normally a need that would have a child removed from a classroom setting. It would just be about how do we adapt our materials to help that child access the curriculum.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding the employment, if the person is not entitled from the 18 to 25, the person is not entitled. Do we have any support for them?
Not entitled to employment support, or?
Yeah, you said they always have a plan, and the plan depends on whatever age that they will be.
Yes.
If a person does not qualify for a plan and
Yes.
is in age,
yes, so if a young person's attending a post-16 for sixth form, etc., they will have an entitlement to access the career service. So they would be given time. Normally, it's a set number of hours over a period of time where they can access a careers advisor, can access normally their careers fairs, work experience opportunities. As a student in the establishment, they'll be able to access that along with.
that's a lot.
No.
Okay. I'm going to bring this agenda item to a close, and moving on to agenda item 8, Newham Virtual School Annual Report. And colleagues, I've read it. If you can.
Me. And sorry, Chair. Yeah.
Sorry.
Still me.
Okay, it's 5 minutes.
I'll be brief. This is the annual report of the virtual school, which is shared with the Department for Education every year. It's a statutory requirement that we report on the work of the virtual school. And it's, as I've said in the introduction, it's ratified by our corporate parenting board. This year, the corporate parenting board will be verifying and approving the report next week, the 1st of May. So that's why you're seeing a version that says draft, because until they've approved it, but there will be no changes between now and the version they hopefully approve next week. This is a statutory requirement. It covers in quite a lot of detail the work of the virtual school, how we meet our statutory requirements of the virtual school. And also it's reported to the Department for Education. We also have other things that we track internally, which I've mentioned in my introduction, point 3. The reason they're not in the report is we don't need to publish those. So for example, we're looking now at how some of those groups that we've identified previously being disproportionately disadvantaged in Newham, how are they supported for the virtual school? So if a group isn't achieving as well in in the rest of the school system? How are they achieving in the virtual school? That's something we're analysing internally. We're not publishing that to the DFE because we're not required to, and we don't want to go kind of into further regulation if we don't need to. But we can share that in future years with Scrutiny if that's of interest. We're now doing that analysis. But in terms of this report this time, it goes through, I mean, I'll let everyone just ask me questions rather than outline everything that's in it.
Yeah.
It goes into quite a lot of detail in both the outcomes, but also some of the practice and the case studies of the virtual school. And just the final point, Chair, because we have to report this retrospectively, this refers to the last school year. So all of the data is up to last summer because we have to use verified data.
Yes, thank you for that. So it's 8:25 now, so I was hoping that we could have finished by 9. So if we keep our questions and answers very brief, we'll be able to do it. Right, so brief questions.
So in regards to, thank you. In regards to the virtual school, is there any good practices that we can, I know it's not, but is there any good practices that we can employ that into the normal
Mainstream school.
Mainstream school. So yes, our virtual school has achieved, as hopefully comes across in the report, some extremely good outcomes for our young people. And a number of ways that we are sharing that with all of our schools in order for them to learn. Our virtual school has been established for a while in Newham. It's they're a well integrated team within our services, and therefore they're well known to our schools. And so one of the things we're doing is some team members go out into schools, almost like an outreach model, and they work with teachers to better understand the experiences of our care experienced children, young people, better understand how the school might be able to support that young person to succeed. I was recently fortunate enough to sit in on a meeting about a young person who's in care. It was chaired by a member of the virtual school team. The social worker was there, the form tutor was there, the carer was there. The young person chose not to come to that meeting. She didn't want to be there, but she'd given her feedback in writing. And we talked about, each kind of person in the meeting talked about the progress. The virtual school was able to give suggestions, not only to the school, but actually also to the social worker. Maybe you want to talk about this with her. So the virtual school is very much a team of people that helps bring all of the professionals together around the child and helps the child's voice be heard. I think there's a lot we could continue to share, but they're already practice being
Thank
shared.
you. Shantu.
I just, in relation to Jemima's question, or in relation to your answer, we have enough social worker to support the children we have in Barcelona.
Yeah, I think that's probably a question from, we have enough social workers to support the children of virtual.
Like, is there any shortage? Because I cannot see that there is no data, so if we can.
Yeah, in terms of, in terms of caseload per social workers are quite average compared to the London boroughs. So we, in terms of the social worker per child, I think, yeah, we have enough social workers to support our children. All our social workers attend our PEP meetings, which is the personal educational plan meetings, to support our children to ensure that they're achieving and they're developing. So in terms of capacity wise, yeah, it's fine.
Thank you.
Our children would have one social worker because the virtual school is working with children in care and
Yeah, in care leavers.
children in care and children in need.
Leavers.
So it's like, they don't have more than one social worker.
Good.
So just, sorry, if you can introduce yourself, your name and this.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I should have asked it.
No, of course, and I should have. So it's Maf Khan, acting director. Maf Khan, I'm the acting director of early help and safeguarding. And so our caseload is 14 in children.
Okay.
Children care. So 14 children per social worker.
Per social worker, isn't it? Thank you. Any other questions?
I just think some of the achievements that are shown in these stats are tremendous.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Everybody involved to be praised.
Yeah.
You should be very proud because they're your children. Yeah.
But I do,
Took my line. I was.
With the chair. The,
Can I just add to that? Because, but I think Laura raised it not only last week, but today as well. That the data we have is comparing to London-wide and what we want to be drilling down into is are our children who come through the virtual school attaining the same levels as children in those same schools?
No.
And that's Annabelle's, we won't be that won't go in a report to the DfE, but it's something that we are very conscious of.
Can I Chair, just respond to the councillor's point? Yes, and Phil, just to commend our young people in the virtual school because they work extremely hard.
They do.
And it's really testament to their hard work. We are fortunate to be invited, Math and I were invited to the annual celebration event. In fact, we gave out certificates, didn't we, Math, this year? And it was a joyous event of young people really celebrating their education achievements.
Yeah.
Something that that
wash off
proud of.
Okay, so I've got few questions.
Of course.
So it mentions the educational outcomes of children in kinship care arrangements. That's a new thing that's come to the virtual school.
Yes. The responsibilities of the virtual school team seem to grow quite regularly.
Okay.
It's every time that there's more need in the system for young people in various care arrangements, often it's highlighted as the virtual school's responsibility. And that's partly because nationally, the impact of virtual schools has been very positive. Local authorities having to have a virtual school has highlighted the importance of good education for children in care, all sorts of care. And in this case, kinship care is a relatively recent addition to the virtual school responsibility, which, as we have a strong virtual school, we're fortunate to be able to incorporate in our approach.
Thank you. So on page 56, it talks about children with a social worker.
Yes.
It says about divert ed team. Is that something new? It says that they worked with 95 children, but we've got more children in care. So the 95 cohort, who are they?
Yes.
And what does that team do?
So the Divert Ed team is a team within the virtual school that do a lot of outreach work with young people with a social worker who are within the care system, but they're not in care in the same way. So this was an initiative that was set up. It was piloted by the Department for Education a few years ago. Newham was approached as a local authority to be asked if we would be willing to take part. We said, yes, please. And we set up the Divert Ed team. The Divert Ed team they often do some of the outreach work I mentioned earlier in terms of showcasing good practice with schools. They work across all of our teams, as we've said on this page here that you've highlighted. They work within our pupil referral units. They work within many of our children with a social worker have had a mobile experience of school. So they've been with that child in and out through various experiences. And their role is, as the rest of the virtual school team, is always to highlight the importance of and the opportunities for education for those children, young people. There are many other partners working with those children for other reasons, but really the focus of the virtual school is how do we advocate for that young person's education and help them access it in whichever way. So the Divert Ed team are extremely creative in helping young people access tuition or helping them go to the library for the first time, helping them to access the resources they need to do homework they may have been given by school. They often help build a relationship with the school as well. Sometimes when we're having other meetings with schools around a young person's at risk of exclusion, for example, Divert Ed worker will come along to try and support and avoid some of that with the school. They do a tremendous amount of work, our Divert Ed team.
Thank you. On page 65, you've mentioned some school names, recognizing them as virtual school roll of honor.
Yes.
Why was it only those schools mentioned?
It's a competitive event every year, this. So at the end of the school year, our virtual school team with our young people look through schools that have been nominated to receive a roll of honor. and it's like an awards that they receive. Every year it's a different group, and I'd like to mention them.
All right.
I will say as well, we didn't put them in the report because we didn't think it was necessarily appropriate. Teams within the council also receive them, but we didn't think we should be saying that's the DFE.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Okay.
Lots of people receive them. It's a certificate signed by Laura, signed by the virtual school head teacher, just to celebrate and thank them.
Yeah. For the good work they're doing.
Exactly.
Page 69, it says there are 118 young people in care who are in needs category. How do we support them to become EET, employment, education or training?
Those are care leavers rather than in care.
Okay,
Okay, just to clarify, I don't know if colleagues want to contribute to this. We do have some strategies within the virtual school because they're care leavers. They're
Yeah. I get it.
slightly
They
different.
cross over in.
Yes.
Crossover, they moved to
The leaving care. So do you want to know in terms of what initiative we have?
Yeah.
Of course. And we are, so the virtual school closely links in with the service manager in leaving care service. And we have a colleague in education who sits in leaving care to really work with our care leavers to think about different sort of opportunities for them. Our actually EAT figures are much better compared to sort of a number of local.
Yeah, it is. I've seen.
It's improved. One of the things we are doing now, and we're thinking of, which Laura is spearheading with Chief Exec, is thinking around the family business model, really thinking around how we as a local authority can give our children opportunities and experiences so that they can get into employment and training.
Yeah.
That's something we're doing.
So it comes, just to add, sorry, it comes from the idea, so even though our EAT figures comparatively
Yes.
still have 1 in 4 of our children aren't doing anything. Now, that can be because of the trauma they have suffered, and they can become dysregulated, but it's also to do with the support mechanisms around them. So many of us will have 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds who we still need to wake up in the morning, who we still look over their CVs, who we still do everything for. Our kids are in a flat on their own, and they may not have a family member who to say, how do I call in sick? How do I do this? How do I do that? And they need that support, which they get from the staff in the leaving care team. One of the things that has struck me is that when you grow up in your own family, chances are you will have work experience in the shop that they have, or in the business they do, or where they work. Whereas we're a council, our children could do anything they want, from youth work to social work to teaching to repairs, electrician, finance, HR, legal, you name it, we have got that department. So actually there should be more opportunities for our children, not less. So this is where the idea of the family, the council is the family business, or the parents. And then you expand that to the police, health, voluntary sector agencies. Everyone else is their aunts and uncles who they can also have jobs with. So that's my take it.
Very well explained, Laura. I'll tell you why. I got 2 in that age category you mentioned, so I know how it is. Okay, so I think I've done all my questions. Yeah, it's done. Just a supplementary. So do you monitor them from when they will come from NEET to, or will they be over 25? Then we don't have the responsibility.
They're still always our children.
It's whether we have.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, although technically at the age of 25, they're not. But actually, they still maintain a relationship with their PAs.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I have care leavers, or actually one care leaver, who's still, he texts me. He tries to swing the lead all the time. He wants my address. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, Benji must be 28, 29.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they never stop.
Yeah.
And we never turn them away.
That's really good to hear. Thank you for that. So
Can I just
Sorry.
ask on that? Is that right? It follows both from what you've said, Sarah, and what Laura's saying. And looking at the outreach, because all those services that are offered, are they all taken up, or do you have to work very hard to get young people to
Really varies.
in with that?
I mean,
We make sure we're fully available
Yes.
to those young people.
Yeah.
Not- As it says at a couple of points, not everyone wants to access the
No.
services and
Yeah.
some don't need to.
Mm.
You know, some, have found their own networks and own ways, but there's kind of regular keeping in touch approaches so that if anyone ever feels they need to tap back into the service, whether it's parts of the virtual school or other parts of the leaving care service, we make sure that we're available and easy to find at all times for young people.
And they respond.
Yes, very responsive. They love coming to the annual celebration event, for example.
Yeah.
Some that are performed every year. We can't remember when they left care, but they come back every year to sing. It's lovely.
Thank you. So
Yeah, I just want to add that we have good relationship with UEL and Newham College, the Leaving Care Service, Newham College in Newvic, to really, so we have bespoke sort of courses, try and get our kids in those courses. So, and I think that has worked really well.
For our 22 and 23 and 24-year-olds, I'm just looking at the fresh data. Last year, the young people who requested and received support, who we keep in touch with, so we have a duty to keep in touch annually if they don't want a full service, was 83% compared to other local authorities at 55%.
That's good, great.
thank you.
Thank you.
So do we note the report or do we agree the report? It's just for noting.
For notes,
noting, because it then goes to the corporate parenting.
Okay.
they approve it, yeah.
Can we note the?
More questions.
Prove it.
So as corporate parents, I think all of us in this room should be really proud of
We should.
some of the work you have done. There's always room for improvement in anywhere we go, but I think you've done a tremendous job.
Sure, Annabelle and Matt will pass on your.
So I want to thank the officers and obviously you as the lead and you as the deputy, Madeline. So I want to thank you and on behalf of my colleagues and myself. Okay, moving on. Item 8. Sorry, item 8 we've done.
Yes.
The performance dashboard. So if we can spend a minute per sheet or per indicator.
8 minutes per sheet.
A.
All right, I was going to say,
per sheet.
oh, a deja vu like from last.
Here tonight.
Yeah. So I think you would have received, so I'm going to go page by page.
Oh, you're gonna go page by the good.
It's on that page. Because right?
Mm.
I have a question.
What page are we on, Chair? The first page.
Page 68
58.
will be from the last week's agenda.
Oh,
What's it called?
17th of April's agenda. The performance dashboard.
I got. All right, I'll just say where I am.
Right.
some of us have got it as a supplementary, Chair.
Exactly.
With-
Page number 7,
Page numbers.
probably.
And this is page 7.
Okay.
Now Artemis wants.
I'm not going to say the page. I'll say the first page, second page, and so on. Right.
Yeah, you were on this page number 7, yeah?
We can't. We're not. No.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. So before I start this,
Yes.
Artemis has reminded me as corporate parenting training on 14th of May. I'm hoping all colleagues will attend that.
Right, please.
Yeah, can we send the calendar invite, please?
Oh, yes.
It's in there.
Okay, brilliant.
Safeguarding and corporate
I was gonna say,
parenting,
it's
that'd be
not just
everything.
your-
Okay,
but that-
yeah, okay. Fine. So, so on the first page, are there any questions? The percentage of infants who turned 30 days in the quarter who received a face-to-face new birth visit within 14 days from birth by a health visitor. Is there any questions on that? If not,
5%.
Yes, we always ask ourselves that. Families don't have to have a new birth visit or a health visitor visit. Some parents choose to give birth at home and they have midwifery there with them. And then they decide they're not going to have a new birth visit within 2 weeks. They want to be left alone. That's their choice. If there are safeguarding concerns, though, that becomes less of their choice, and we would assess whether we need to intervene and ensure the baby's seen. That wouldn't be by this service, it would be by maths. So
thank you. Percentage of EHCPs issued within 20 weeks from initial request.
Yeah. It seems we have done 31 plan issued with 20 weeks on time. And that means 61% we have achieved out of 100%. I would say we are doing better. We are progressing, but there is always room to improve.
Yep.
And thanks for working hard. The one we have in 2022 Ofsted inspection, since then, we really actually moved on.
We have indeed.
Really did great. And I always feel still something.
It's always room for improvement.
I mean,
It's a question, Shantu.
my question is, how can we improve further, make sure we are actually tracking our plan on time?
I can take that because this is the dashboard, the answer to this is actually on page 3. So we've recruited more, hang on a minute, let me just make sure I've got the right. As I said, we're
Psychology.
recruiting more education psychologists, speech and language therapists and others to improve the number of planned assessments we can do to get plans ready. We've expanded the SEND case officers. So prior to Christmas, our SEND case officers were each managing around 270 plans, which is a huge number of plans. And that's due to the increase of need in the local authority. So we've expanded the case officer team so that that's more manageable because, I mean, there's a later target around annual reviews. Once you have a plan, you also have to make sure it's up to date. So we need to manage that. We're working hard to try and improve the system so that we're chasing the assessments to make sure they're coming back in time to add to the plan. So it's really each stage of the assessment we need to improve. Some of the delays take longer, like I said earlier, educational psychology assessments are taking longer, but we're trying to improve the whole system so that increases, so that improves further.
Thanks, just commentary. Annabelle, we had national shortage
Yes.
of speech and language therapists and occupational therapists.
Yes.
It was hard to hire, even though if you have a funding available. So how currently you are managing those areas? Is there any alternative way you're trying to improve this area, or you found more extra therapists within in the period?
So the speech and language and occupational therapists have both improved their outcomes. And the way they've done that is by restructuring the service so that the therapists, and this sits within our health team, the therapists are spending less time on paperwork and more time on assessment. And so they've streamlined the paperwork to improve the numbers so each therapist can see more children. And that's had a big impact. That's why it was highlighted as an improvement. We'll need to continue to support them to do that because, as you said, it is a national problem.
Yeah, because we are working as a team. It's good for us. We are hearing good and bad, but still.
I know it needs to.
Thank you. Suspensions from all Newham schools. Right. Moving on, permanent exclusions from Newham schools, secondary. I have a question on it.
Sure.
Does the local authority have a say in permanent exclusions? Or is it just the governing body? How do we support young people to get back into education?
So when there's a permanent exclusion, it's the decision of the school, it's the decision of the head teacher. The local authority has to be informed, so the school has to inform us, and we have an inclusion team that then notify various people, including myself. We look at every time there's a permanent exclusion or proposed permanent exclusion. I personally look at the evidence being provided to support that exclusion. In every case, we challenge it.
Oh,
In every single case, and we always try to avoid exclusion. And one of our inclusion officers will go and be part of the hearing, because governors hear the decision. So the governors, which in an academy normally is either a governing body or a committee of the trust, the governors hear the decision to exclude. The head teacher or a representative needs to present the case to the governors. This is how it normally works, and certainly how it works in Newham schools. The young person, the family, and sometimes an advocate have an opportunity to also present their case. The governors decide whether to uphold the exclusion or to overturn it, which does happen. And we offer to be part of that process. Sometimes quite often the schools support it because they know that we can help the family. So if an exclusion is upheld, we can help the family with next steps. We can help transition into alternative provision of some description or the PRU. But we are available to be at every single exclusion hearing, which is one of the reasons our exclusion figures are actually low compared to other local areas. We also look at I don't know many other directors who look at every single exclusion and scrutinise it, because we see it as such an important point in a young person's life. It can be so detrimental.
Life-changing, yes.
It's life-changing. And so we do everything. And a number of occasions we have a conversation with the school and say, hang on, there might be a different way of approaching this.
Really good to know.
So I have a supplementary in relation to your question.
Yeah.
So is it harder for local authority to involve the school who are time magicians who are academy?
It's a great question. So we don't have, with a permanent exclusion, we have a statutory responsibility. So we can intervene with any permanent exclusion, regardless of the type of school, with the exception of independent schools. That's a different system. But any state-funded school, we can intervene in a permanent exclusion. Some academies are less open to us being involved than others. And we still take the same approach. We still challenge the exclusion. We're less likely to be invited to be part of the panel, but we still do our best to get there. And we'll certainly always reach out to the family anyway.
Thanks for sharing. I know I'm hearing some negative side of it. Yeah.
Moving on, suspensions for white and black Caribbean ethnicity, total number of suspensions as a percentage of pupils. Moving on to the next one, persistent absence in primary schools. Okay, there's two questions. Alan and then Lester.
Yeah, I'm hearing that up and down the country, this shot up after COVID.
Yes.
So I'm wondering how our position compares with places we could reasonably be compared to, and how much it's coming down to.
Great question. It shot up for us after COVID as well. COVID had a significant impact on attendance in a negative way in schools in Newham. We have put in place a targeted attendance team to support schools with children who are persistently absent. And so we're now back to pre-pandemic levels with our attendance. And actually we're now better than the national average, so we're better than pre-pandemic levels for persistent absence now, partly because we've gone into the full targeted attendance team. And one thing to note, which is particularly positive for the work of the attendance team, is it's a traded service. So the schools pay for our attendance team's time, and they're continuing to do so. So they've seen the impact of that work, which is one of the best tests actually, because they see it's improved the attendance of their children.
Thank you. Lester.
Are there any schools which are particularly bad? It's just the average, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some schools manage attendance better than others, as with everything. There are, I think, at last count, there are 4 primary schools and 2 secondaries where we are still intervening more around persistent absence. So what that means is we look at them more frequently, because we can see trends of particular persistent absence is a trend where schools' interventions are not working. That's also been a challenge within the PRU. So it's more with the PRU, where you would be particularly worried about a child being persistently absent because they've already had a gap in education if they've ended up in the PRU. So there we are intervening more, which tends to mean more frequency of visit, more seniority of who goes along. So the team manager will go to those meetings herself. She'll escalate it to the head of service. Sometimes he escalates it to me. It rarely happens that it has to reach me because we have such a strong system, but sometimes I will need to speak to the head teacher or the governors and say, we need a different plan, this isn't working.
Okay,
Which of the schools? I would be,
maybe we take it offline.
I could take it offline.
Yes.
More than happy to share offline, but I would have to remember, and at this time of day, I'm not sure I'd do a good job of.
Moving on, persistent absence in secondary schools. Any questions? If not, number of knife crime injury victims age 1 to 24. Any questions?
I have the
Sorry.
knife crime, I have, Chair. Sorry. Yeah, so shall I say?
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
So as we're hearing,
Oh.
The bothered been calm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I just finished the.
so 35 offences where the knife crime injury victim was age 24 or younger. So I think within the 12 months period, at the moment, we are hearing everywhere the shortage of the police, even though we are facing in Newham. We don't have enough police officer. And as you're working in SEND department, are you requesting or are you writing to them saying that we need more police because our young children are not safe?
That would come, that line of sort of communication would go from our crime and antisocial behaviour
So,
department, and we would, so we work closely with them.
yes, this is I'm asking.
But the line of communication to the borough commander
Yes.
would go from them. However, we do have senior police officers who sit on both our Youth Justice Board and our Newham Children's Safeguarding Board. So they are well aware of the shortage, okay? But actually, we continue to press.
Please do.
But it does go from the crime and antisocial behaviour is the line of that.
Yeah, but you're working with them.
Oh, yeah.
Research will show
Yeah.
that this is what we would term in the youth
Yeah.
safety strategy as disrupt and deter, and you'll know the youth safety strategy in its form came here as one of the elements that can deter knife crime.
Yeah.
But actually, with children, that isn't the element that deters knife crime. It's more to do with recovering from being the victim of domestic abuse as a child, exclusions.
We discussed in last meeting.
And mentoring stuff, be it the police on the street is.
I know, but
element.
I know nobody like you. Nobody want to hear our children are dying, you know.
Thank you. Just checking, we don't have to extend standing orders, do we?
I think automatically, Chair, 9:30.
9:30. All right. So let's keep it very brief, okay? First time entrance to youth justice system rate per 100,000 or of 10 to 17 population. Any questions? Right. The next one is percentage of children becoming the subject of child protection plan for second or subsequent time. Percentage of re-referrals within 12 months. Black and Black British children, percentage of re-referrals within 12 months, it's a mouthful. Percentage of children coming back into care. Stop me if you have any questions, okay? Care leavers in employment, education or training. I think we covered a lot of it in the previous sessions.
On last,
And also
Last week, yeah.
yeah.
care leavers in employment, education or training. Again, we talked about it
Yeah.
today. Yeah, that's it.
That's- Yeah, let's all go on.
Brilliant.
Much as we love this meeting.
Let me see what's on. Done a performance dashboard.
Yeah.
Good. So,
Anything else? Not,
Okay.
I don't think.
On time.
go on,
I want to say something.
go on.
I've written something. So I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Scrutiny Chair,
Oh, wow. Thank you.
your expertise and your guidance. And so
Oh.
much in the meetings and some of the questions or topics where we were not that confident of understanding, you helped us. So thank you for that, and thank you for the last 1 year. And I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to the cabinet lead, deputy cabinet lead, and the council officers for their expertise and commitment to ensuring transparency and accountability are truly valued.
Thank you so much. And, but I'm
Thank
thinking,
you.
is it the last meeting of Lakshmi?
Yeah.
Finish.
Let the glory continue.
So thank you for your hard work and professionalism. Your contributions are essential to the department that you serve. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to other members of the scrutiny for all the support. I think we have amazing 1 year.
No,
Thank you.
my question, is it Lakshmi's last day? in
Yes.
Scrutiny.
Yes.
Nathan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So look, colleagues, now two people
I know.
taken my lines today, including Alan, right? I wanted to thank the officers, the cabinet leads, wonderful work you are doing, and we are really, really grateful. And obviously, my colleagues, myself, we're a team, we work together. It's about finding solutions if we have any issues. And I also want to thank officers.
Putting us up with us.
Thank you, Aaron. And we're done for this year.
Thank you so,
I think it's been
so much all.
a good year,
Yes.
and I really think that we have embraced that trial of no Chloe's.
Yeah.
And I think that actually it's worked much better than when we have Chloe's.
Yes, I feel that.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. Well done, Laura, for suggesting that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
On the platform, let's see.
Brilliant. Have a good evening, everybody.
Let's go.
Oh, sorry, almost smashed your phone.
Actually, I'd like to wear our matching.